Hare Krishna.
Welcome. I'm fine. Yes, I'm coming to be. God is listening. Yes.
Being so many things.
Yes. 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 We try to enjoy because we are not there. Father prayer is not there. Yes.
Let's try.
Like some of them know. Saying
The following is a free-for-download audiobook available on Google Drive. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 32, The Reunion. This chapter describes how Sri Krishna manifested himself in the midst of the gopis, who had become extremely disturbed by their separation from him. After he consoled them, they expressed to him their deep feelings of ecstasy. The gopis, having shown in various ways their great eagerness to see Krishna, the attractor of Cupid, he appeared before them wearing yellow silken garments and a beautiful flower garland. Some of the gopis, overwhelmed with ecstasy at seeing him, grasped his hands, and others placed his arm on their shoulders, and others accepted the remnants of betel nut he had chewed. Thus they served him. One gopi, impelled by loving anger toward Krishna, bit her lip and looked askance at him. Because the gopis were so attached to Krishna, they were not satiated even by continuously gazing at him. One of them then placed Krishna within her heart, closed her eyes, and embracing him within herself again and again, became absorbed in transcendental bliss, just like a yogi. In this way, the pain the gopis had felt because of separation from the Lord was dispelled. Next, Lord Krishna went to the bank of the Yamuna in the company of the cowherd girls, his internal potencies. The gopis then made a seat for Krishna out of their shawls, and after he had sat down, they enjoyed with him by gesturing amorously. The gopis still felt hurt that Krishna had disappeared, so he explained to them why he had done so. He further told them that he had come under the exclusive control of their loving devotion and would ever remain indebted to them. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, O king, having thus spoken and sung their hearts out in various charming ways, the gopis began to weep loudly. They were very eager to see Lord Krishna. Text 2. Then Lord Krishna, a smile on his lotus face, appeared before the gopis. Wearing a garland and a yellow garment, he directly appeared as one who can bewilder the mind of Cupid, who himself bewilders the minds of ordinary people. Text 3. When the gopis saw that their dearmost Krishna had returned to them, they all stood up at once, and out of their affection for him, their eyes bloomed wide. It was as if the air of life had re-entered their bodies. Text 4. One gopi joyfully took Krishna's hand between her folded palms, and another placed his arm anointed with sandalwood paste on her shoulder. Text 5. A slender gopi respectfully took her joined hands the betel nut he had chewed, and another gopi, burning with desire, put his lotus feet on her breasts. Text 6. One gopi, beside herself with loving anger, bit her lips and stared at him with frowning eyebrows, as if to wound him with her harsh glances. Text 7. Another gopi looked with unblinking eyes upon his lotus face, but even after deeply relishing its sweetness, she did not feel satiated, just as mystic saints are never satiated when meditating upon the Lord's feet. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the analogy given here of saintly persons meditating upon the Lord's feet is only partially applicable, since the ecstasy the gopis felt when Krishna came back was actually unparalleled. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti also reveals that this particular gopi is the most fortunate of all, Srimati Radharani. Text 8. One gopi took the Lord through the aperture of her eyes and placed him within her heart. Then, with her eyes closed and her bodily hairs standing on end, she continuously embraced him within. Thus immersed in transcendental ecstasy, she resembled a yogi meditating upon the Lord. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states that the 7 gopis mentioned so far in this chapter are the first 7 of the 8 principal gopis, whose status allowed them to immediately approach Sri Krishna upon his reappearance. The Acharya quotes a verse from the Sri Vaishnava Toshni that give the names of the 7 as Chandravali, Shyamala, Shaibya, Padma, Sri Radha, Lalita, and Vishaka. The 8th is understood to be Bhadra. Sri Vaishnava Toshini itself quotes a verse from the Skanda Purana that declares these 8 gopis to be the principal among the 3 billion gopis. Detailed information about the hierarchy of gopis is available in Srila Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani. The Padma Purana confirms that Sri Radha is the foremost of the gopis. Yata Radha Priyas Vishnos Taya Tasya Kundam Priyatata Sarva Gopishu Sai Vaika Vishnur Atyanta Vallabha. Quote, just as Srimati Radharani is most dear to Krishna, her bathing pond is similarly dear. Of all the gopis, she is the most beloved of the Lord. End quote. The Brihad Gautamiya Tantra also names Srimati Radharani as Krishna's foremost consort. Devi Krishna Mai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Maya Sarva Kanti Sammohini Para. Quote, the transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord. End quote. This translation is Srila Prabhupada's English rendering of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 483. Additional information about Sri Radha is given in the Rig Padishista, a supplement to the Rig Veda. Radhaya Madhavo Devao Madhave Naiva Radhika Vibrajante Janesu. Quote, among all persons, it is Sri Radha in whose company Lord Madhava is specially glorious, as she is especially glorious in his. End quote. Text 9. The gopis enjoyed the greatest festivity when they saw their beloved Keshava again. They gave up the distress of separation, just as people in general forget their misery when they gain the association of a spiritually enlightened person. Text 10. Encircled by the gopis, who were now relieved of all distress, Lord Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, shone forth splendidly. My dear king, Krishna thus appeared like the supersoul encircled by his spiritual potencies. Purport. The gopis are Lord Krishna's internal potency, and therefore when they were relieved and happy again, the Lord shone forth even more brilliantly than before, and his transcendental bliss increased. Krishna loved the gopis with pure transcendental love, and they love him in the same pure way. The whole affair, conducted on the transcendental platform, is inconceivable to those bound in material existence. Text 11 and 12. The Almighty Lord then took the gopis with him to the bank of the Kalindi, and who, with the hands of her waves, had scattered piles of soft sand upon the shore. In that auspicious place, the breeze, bearing the fragrance of blooming kunda and mandara flowers, attracted many bees, and the abundant rays of the autumn moon dispelled the darkness of night. Text 13. Their heartache vanquished by the ecstasy of seeing Krishna, the gopis, like the personified Vedas before them, felt their desires completely fulfilled. For their dear friend, Krishna, they arranged a seat with their shawls, which were smeared with the kumkum powder from their breasts. Purport. In the 87th canto of this chapter of this canto, text 23, the Shrutis, or personified Vedas, pray as follows. Striya uru gendra boga bunja danda vishakta shdiyo vayam api te sama samadrisho nrigri sharoja sudha. Quote, these women fully absorb their minds in meditation on Lord Krishna's powerful arms, which are like the bodies of great serpents. We want to become just like the gopis and render service to his lotus feet. End quote. The Shrutis had seen Krishna during his appearance in the previous day of Brahma and had become full of the most intense desire to associate with him. Then, in this kalpa, they became gopis. And since the Vedas are eternal in human society, the Shrutis in this kalpa also become full of desire for Krishna, and in the next kalpa they also become gopis. This information is given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Text 14. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whom the great masters of mystic meditation arrange a seat within their hearts, took his seat in the assembly of gopis. His transcendental body, the exclusive abode of beauty and opulence within the three worlds, shone brilliantly as the gopis worshipped him. Purport. The masters of mystic meditation include Lord Shiva, Anantashesh, and all other exalted personalities, all of whom keep the Lord seated within the lotus of their hearts. This same Lord, conquered by the intense, selfless love of the gopis, agreed to become their boyfriend and dance with them in Vrindavan after sitting upon their fragrant shawls on the bank of the Yamuna River. Text 15. Sri Krishna had awakened romantic desires within the gopis, and they honored him by glancing at him with playful smiles, gesturing amorously with their eyebrows, and massaging his hands and feet as they held them in their laps. Even while worshipping him, however, they felt somewhat angry, and thus they addressed him as follows. Text 16. The gopis said, some people reciprocate the affection only of those who are affectionate toward them, while others show affection even to those who are indifferent or inimical, and yet others do not show affection toward anyone. Dear Krishna, please properly explain this matter to us. Purport. By this apparently polite question, the gopis want to expose Lord Krishna's failure to properly reciprocate their love. They were very disturbed when Sri Krishna left them in the forest, and they want to know why he caused them to suffer in these loving affairs. Text 17. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, so-called friends who show affection only for each other to benefit themselves are actually selfish. They have no true friendship, nor are they following the true principle of religion, Indeed, if they did not expect to benefit for themselves, they would not reciprocate. Purport. The Lord here reminds the gopis that in pure loving friendship there is no sense of selfish interest, but rather only love for one's friend. Text 18. My dear slender-waisted gopis, some people are genuinely merciful, or, like parents, naturally affectionate. Such persons who devotedly serve even those who fail to reciprocate with them are following the true, faultless path of religion, and they are true well-wishers. Text 19. Then there are those individuals who are spiritually self-satisfied, mutually fulfilled, or by nature ungrateful or simply envious of superiors. Such persons will not love even those who love them, what to speak of those who are inimical. Purport. Some people, being spiritually self-satisfied, do not reciprocate others' affection because they want to avoid entanglement in mundane dealings. Other persons do not reciprocate simply out of envy or arrogance. And still, others fail to reciprocate because they are materially satisfied and thus uninterested in new material opportunities. Lord Krishna patiently explains all these things to the gopis. Text 20. But the reason I did not immediately reciprocate the affection of living beings, even when they worship me, O gopis, is that I want to intensify their loving devotion. They then become like a poor man who has gained some wealth and then lost it, and who thus becomes so anxious that he can think of nothing else. Purport. Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Ye etamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Quote, as people approach me, I reciprocate with them accordingly. End quote. Even if the Lord is approached by someone with devotion, to intensify the devotee's love, the Lord may not immediately reciprocate fully. In fact, the Lord is truly reciprocating. After all, a sincere devotee always prays to the Lord, quote, please help me to love you purely, end quote. Therefore, the Lord's so-called neglect is actually the fulfillment of the devotee's prayer. Lord Krishna intensifies our love for him by apparently separating himself from us, and the result is that we achieve what we really wanted and prayed for, intense love for the absolute truth, Krishna. Thus, Lord Krishna's apparent negligence is actually his thoughtful reciprocation and the fulfillment of our deepest and purest desire. According to the Acharyas, as Lord Krishna began to speak this verse, the gopis looked at one another with squinting eyes, trying to hide the smiles breaking out on their faces. Even as Lord Krishna was speaking, the gopis had begun to realize that he was bringing them to the highest perfection of loving service. Text 21. My dear girls, understanding that simply for my sake you had rejected the authority of worldly opinion, of the Vedas, and of your relatives, I acted as I did only to increase your attachment to me. Even when I removed myself from your sight by suddenly disappearing, I never stopped loving you. Therefore, my beloved gopis, please do not harbor any bad feelings toward me, your beloved. Purport. Here the Lord indicates that although the gopis were already perfect in their love for him, still to inconceivably increase their perfection, he show an example for the world, he acted as he did. Text 22. I am not able to repay my debt for your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. Purport. The translation and word meanings of this verse are taken from Srila Prabhupada's English rendering of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 4-180. In conclusion, the gopis became eternally glorious by their behavior in the Lord's temporary absence, and the mutual love between them and the Lord was wonderfully enhanced. This is the perfection of Krishna and his loving devotees. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 32nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. entitled The Reunion. The following is a free-for-download audiobook available on Google Drive. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 33, The Rasa Dance. This chapter describes Lord Sri Krishna's Rasa Dance, which he enjoyed with his beloved girlfriends in the forests along the Yamuna River. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is most expert in the knowledge of transcendental moods. In the company of the gopis, who were tightly bound to him by the ropes of affection and totally dedicated to his service, the Lord expanded himself into numerous forms. The gopis became intoxicated in their enthusiasm to enjoy the rasa dance, and thus they began satisfying Krishna's senses by singing, dancing, and gesturing amorously. The sweet voices of the gopis filled all the directions. Even after Lord Krishna manifested himself in numerous forms, each gopi thought that he was standing next to her alone. Gradually the gopis became fatigued from the continuous dancing and singing, and each of them placed her arm on the shoulder of the Krishna standing beside her. Some gopis smelled and kissed Krishna's arm, which bore the fragrance of the lotus and was anointed with sandalwood paste. Others put Krishna's hand on their bodies, and yet others gave Krishna pleasure by embracing him lovingly. Lord Krishna, being the Supreme Absolute Truth, is the only actual enjoyer and object of enjoyment. Although he is one without a second, he expands himself into many forms to increase his personal pastimes. Therefore, great scholars say that Krishna's Rasa Leela is like a child's playing with his own reflection. Sri Krishna is self-satisfied and fully endowed with inconceivable transcendental opulences. When he exhibits such pastimes as the Rasa Leela, all living beings, from Brahma down to the blade of grass, become merged in an ocean of astonishment. When Maharaj Parikshit heard the narration of Krishna's conjugal pastimes with the gopis, which superficially resemble the activities of lusty, wanton persons, he expressed a doubt to the great devotees, Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva dispelled this doubt by saying, quote, "Since Sri Krishna is the absolute enjoyer, such pastimes as these can never be contaminated by any fault. But if anyone other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead tries to enjoy such pastimes, he will suffer the same fate as that someone other than Lord Rudra would suffer if he attempted to drink an ocean of poison. Moreover, even one who only thinks of imitating Krishna's Rasa Leela will certainly suffer misfortune." End quote. The Supreme Absolute Truth, Sri Krishna, is present within the hearts of all living entities as their indwelling witness. When out of his mercy he exhibits his intimate pastimes to his devotees, these activities are never besmirched by mundane imperfection. Any living being who hears of the spontaneous loving attraction the gopis felt for Lord Krishna will have his desires for material sense gratification destroyed at the root, and will develop his natural propensity for serving the Supreme Lord, the Spiritual Master, and the Lord's devotees. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, "When the cowherd girls heard the Supreme Personality of Godhead speak these most charming words, they forgot their distress caused by separation from him. Touching his transcendental limbs, they felt all their desires fulfilled." Text 2. There, on the Yamuna's banks, Lord Govinda then began the pastime of the rasa dance, in the company of those jewels among women, the faithful gopis, who joyfully linked their arms together. Text 3. The festive rasa dance commenced with the gopis arrayed in a circle. Lord Krishna expanded himself and entered between each pair of gopis, and as that master of mystic power placed his arms around their necks, each girl thought he was standing next to her alone. The demigods and their wives were overwhelmed with eagerness to witness the rasa dance, and they soon crowded the sky with their hundreds of celestial airplanes. Purport. Srila Bilba Mangala Thakur has written the following verse about the rasa dance. Anganam anganam antara madhavo, madhavam chantare nangana, itam kalpite mandale madhyaga, sanjago vinuna devaki nandana. Quote, Lord Madhava was situated between each pair of gopis, and a gopi was situated between each pair of his manifestations. And Sri Krishna, the son of Devaki, also appeared in the middle of the circle, playing upon his flute and singing. End quote. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that the gopis, maddened by love, were unable to understand that Sri Krishna had expanded himself so he could personally dance with each of them. Each gopi saw one manifestation of Krishna. The demigods and their wives, however, could see all his different manifestations as they watched the rasa dance from their airplanes, and thus they were completely astonished. Text 4. Kettle drums then resounded in the sky, while flowers rained down, and the chief Gandharvas and their wives sang Lord Krishna's spotless glories. Purport. As stated here, Lord Krishna's glory in dancing the rasa dance is pure spiritual bliss. The demigods in heaven, in charge of maintaining proper propriety in the universe, ecstatically accepted the rasa dance as the ultimate religious affair, completely different from the perverted reflection of romance we find in this mundane world. Text 5. A tumultuous sound arose from the armlets, ankle bells, and waist bells of the gopis as they sported with their beloved Krishna in the circle of the rasa dance. Text 6. In the midst of the dancing gopis, Lord Krishna appeared most brilliant, like an exquisite sapphire in the midst of golden ornaments. Purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that Devaki, besides being the name of Vasudev's wife, is also a name of Mother Yashoda, as stated in the Adipur Purana. Dve namni nanda braryaya Yashoda Devakiticha. Quote, the wife of Nanda has two names, Yashoda and Devaki. End quote. Text 7. As the gopis sang praise of Krishna, their feet danced, their hands gestured, and their eyebrows moved with playful smiles. With their braids and belts tied tight, their waists bending, their faces perspiring, the garments on their breasts moving this way and that, and their earrings swinging on their cheeks, Lord Krishna's young consorts shone like streaks of lightning in a mass of clouds. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami explains that according to the analogy of lightning flashing in clouds, the perspiration on the lovely faces of the gopis resembled drops of mist, and their singing resembled thunder. The word agrantaya may also be read agrantaya, meaning loosened, end quote. This would indicate that although the gopis began the dance with their hair and belts tightly drawn, these gradually slackened and loosened. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that the gopis were expert at exhibiting mudras, precise hand gestures that express feelings or convey meanings associated with the theme of a performance. Thus, sometimes Krishna and the gopis would artistically move their interlocking arms together, and sometimes they would separate arms and exhibit mudras to act out the meaning of the songs they were singing. The word pada-nyashai indicates that the gopis artistically and gracefully placed the steps of their dancing feet in an enchanting way, and the words sashmitar Bru Vilashar indicates that the romantic movements of their eyebrows smiling with love were most charming to behold. Text 8. Eager to enjoy conjugal love, their throats colored with various pigments, the gopis sang loudly and danced. They were overjoyed by Krishna's touch, and they sang songs that filled the entire universe. Purport. According to an authoritative book on music called Sangita Sara, Tevanta Eva Raga Surya Vatyo Jiva Jataya Teshu Sodasha Sahashi Pura Gopi Kritavara. Quote, there are as many musical ragas as there are species of life. Among these ragas are 16,000 principal ones, which were manifested by the gopis. End quote. Thus, the gopis created 16,000 different ragas or musical modes, and these have subsequently been disseminated throughout the world. The words Yad Gitainedam and Avritam also indicate that even today, devotees throughout the world sing the praises of Krishna, following the example of the gopis. Text 9. One gopi, joining Lord Mukunda in his singing, sang pure melodious tones that rose harmoniously above his. Krishna was pleased and showed great appreciation for her performance, saying, quote, excellent, excellent, end quote. Then another gopi repeated the same melody, but in a special metrical pattern, and Krishna also praised her. Text 10. Then one gopi grew tired from the rasa dance. She turned to Krishna, standing at her side, holding a baton, and grasped his shoulder with her arm. The dancing had loosened her bracelets and the flowers in her hair. Purport. In the previous verse states that Sri Krishna honored the gopis for their singing and dancing, and in this verse we see how the gopis responded by dealing intimately and confidently with him. Here, a tired gopi held on to Krishna's shoulder with her arm resting against him. Srila Jiva Goswami explains that the word gada in this verse indicates a baton suitable for a dancing master. Lord Krishna brought this item of paraphernalia to enhance his enjoyment of the rasa dance. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti states that the gopi mentioned here is Srimati Radharani, whereas the two gopis mentioned in the previous verse are, in order, Vishaka and Lalita. Text 11. Upon the shoulder of one gopi, Krishna placed his arm, whose natural blue lotus fragrance was mixed with that of the sandalwood pulp, anointing it. As the gopi relished that fragrance, her bodily hair stood on end in jubilation, and she kissed his arm. Text 12. Next to Krishna's cheek, one gopi put her own, beautified by the effulgence of her earrings, which glittered as she danced. Krishna then carefully gave her the betel nut he was chewing. Text 13. Another gopi became fatigued as she danced and sang, the bells on her ankles and waist tinkling. So she placed upon her breasts the comforting lotus hand of Lord Achyuta, who was standing by her side. Text 14. Having attained as their ultimate lover, Lord Achyuta, the exclusive consort of the goddess of fortune, the gopis enjoyed great pleasure. They sang his glories as he held their necks with his arms. Text 15. Enhancing the beauty of the gopis' faces were the lotus flowers behind their ears, the locks of hair decorating their cheeks, and drops of perspiration. The reverberation of their armlets and ankle bells made a loud musical sounds, and their chaplets scattered. Thus the gopis danced with the Supreme Lord in the arena of the rasa dance as swarms of bees sang in accompaniment. Text 16. In this way, Lord Krishna, the original Lord Narayan, the master of the goddess of fortune, took pleasure in the company of the young women of Vraja by embracing them, caressing them, and glancing lovingly at them as he smiled his broad, playful smiles. It was just as if a child were playing with his own reflection. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments on as follows on this verse, quote, Lord Krishna alone is the supreme absolute truth, and his potencies are unlimited. All these potencies, taking personal forms, engage Lord Krishna in his pastimes, just as the opulent manifestation of his one supreme transcendental potency manifests all the countless potencies of the Lord. So, in the rasa dance, Krishna manifests himself as many times as there are various potencies represented by the gopis. Everything is Krishna, but by his desire, his spiritual energy, Yogamaya, manifests the gopis. When his internal potency, Yogamaya, thus produces such pastimes for the enhancement of his transcendental emotions, it is just like a young boy playing with his own reflection. But since these pastimes are created by his spiritual potency, they are eternal and self-manifesting. End quote. Text 17. Their senses overwhelmed by the joy of having his physical association, the gopis could not prevent their hair, their dresses, and the cloths covering their breasts to become disheveled, their garlands and ornaments scattered. O hero of the Kuru dynasty. Text 18. The wives of the demigods, observing Krishna's playful activities from their airplanes, were entranced and became agitated with lust. Indeed, even the moon and his entourage, the stars, became astonished. Text 19. Expanding himself as many times as there were cowherd women to associate with, the Supreme Lord, though self-satisfied, playfully enjoyed their company. Purport. As Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out, it has already been explained that Lord Krishna is eternally free from all material desire, perfect on the platform of spiritual self-satisfaction. Text 20. Seeing that the gopis were fatigued from conjugal enjoyment, my dear king, merciful Krishna lovingly wiped their faces with his comforting hand. Text 21. The gopis honored their hero with smiling glances sweetened by the beauty of their cheeks and the effulgence of their curly locks and glittering golden earrings. Overjoyed from the touch of his fingernails, they chanted the glories of his all-auspicious transcendental pastimes. Text 22. Lord Krishna's garland had been crushed during his conjugal dalliance with the gopis and colored vermilion by the kumkum powder on their breasts. To dispel the fatigue of the gopis, Krishna entered the water of the Yamuna, followed swiftly by bees, who were singing like the best of the Gandharvas. He appeared like a lordly elephant, entering the water to relax in the company of his consorts. Indeed, the Lord had transgressed all worldly and Vedic morality, just as a powerful elephant might break the dikes in a paddy field. Text 23. My dear king, in the water, Krishna found himself being splashed on all sides by the laughing gopis who looked at him with love. As the demigods worshipped him by showering flowers from their airplanes, the self-satisfied Lord took pleasure in playing like the king of elephants. Text 24. Then the Lord strolled through a small forest on the bank of the Yamuna. This forest was filled to its limits with breezes carrying the fragrances of all the flowers growing on the land and in the water. Followed by his entourage of bees and beautiful women, Lord Krishna appeared like an intoxicated elephant with his she-elephants. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, it is implicit here that after playing in the water, Lord Krishna had his body massaged, and that he then dressed himself in his favorite clothing before resuming his pastimes with the gopis. Text 25. Although the gopis were firmly attached to Lord Krishna, whose desires are always fulfilled, The Lord was not internally affected by any mundane sex desire. Still, to perform his pastimes, the Lord took advantage of all these moonlit autumn nights, which inspire poetic descriptions of transcendental affairs. Purport. It is difficult to translate into English the word rasa, which indicates the spiritual bliss derived from one's loving relationship with Lord Krishna. That bliss is experienced in the midst of spiritual pastimes with the Lord and his devotees. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that great Vaishnava poets like Vyas, Parasara, Jayadev, Leela Shuka, Bilmangala Thakur, Govardhanacharya, and Srila Rupa Goswami have tried in their poetry to describe the conjugal affairs of the Lord. These descriptions are never complete, however, since the Lord's pastimes are unlimited. Thus, the attempt to glorify such pastimes is still going on and will go on forever. Lord Krishna arranged an extraordinary season of beautiful autumn nights to enhance his loving affairs, and those autumn nights have inspired transcendental poets since time immemorial. Text 26 and 27. Parikshit Maharaj said, O Brahmana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of the universe, has descended to this earth along with his plenary portion to destroy irreligion and establish religious principles. Indeed, he is the original speaker, follower, and guardian of moral laws. How, then, could he have violated them by touching other men's wives? Purport. As Shukadev Goswami was speaking, Maharaj Parikshit noticed that some persons seated in the assembly on the bank of the Ganges were harboring doubt about the Lord's activities. These doubtful persons were karmis, jnanis, and others who were not devotees of the Lord. To clear up their doubts, King Parikshit asked this question on their behalf. Text 28. O faithful upholder of vows, please destroy our doubt by explaining to us what purpose the self-satisfied Lord of the Yadus had in mind when he behaved so contemptibly. Purport. It is clear to the enlightened that these doubts will arise in the minds and hearts of persons unfamiliar with the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, since time immemorial, great sages and enlightened kings like Parikshit Maharaj have openly raised these questions to provide the authoritative answer for all posterity. Text 29. Shukadev Goswami said, the status of powerful controllers is not harmed by any apparently audacious transgression of morality we may see in them, for they are just like fire, which devours everything fed into it and remains unpolluted. Purport. Great, potent personalities are not ruined by an apparent transgression of moral principles. Sridhar Swami mentions the examples of Brahma, Indra, Soma, Vishwamitra, and others. A fire devours all that is fed into it, but the fire does not change its nature. Similarly, a great personality does not fall from his position by an irregularity in behavior. In the following verse, however, Shukadev Goswami makes it clear that if we try to imitate the great personalities ruling the universe, the result will be catastrophic. Text 30. One who is not a great controller should never imitate the behavior of ruling personalities, even mentally. If out of foolishness an ordinary person does imitate such behavior, he will simply destroy himself, just as a person who is not Rudra would destroy himself if he tried to drink an ocean of poison. Purport. Lord Shiva, or Rudra, once drank an ocean of poison, and the result was that an attractive blue mark appeared on his neck. But if we were to drink even a drop of such poison, we would die immediately. Just as we should not imitate this pastime of Shiva's, we should not imitate Lord Krishna's activities with the gopis. We should clearly understand that while Lord Krishna certainly descends to demonstrate religious principles, he also descends to demonstrate that he is God and we are not. That also must be demonstrated. The Lord enjoys with his internal potency and thus attracts us to the spiritual platform. We should not try to imitate Krishna, for we will suffer severely. Text 31. The statements of the Lord's empowered servants are always true, and the acts they perform are exemplary when consistent with those statements. Therefore, one who is intelligent should carry out their instructions. Purport. The word Ishwar is usually defined in Sanskrit dictionaries as, quote, Lord, Master, Ruler, end quote, and also as, quote, capable, potent to perform, end quote. Srila Prabhupada often translated the word Ishvara as, quote, controller, end quote, which brilliantly synthesizes the two fundamental concepts of Ishvara, namely a master or ruler and a capable or potent person. A master may be incompetent, but a controller is a master or lord who is in fact makes things happen. The Parameshwar, the supreme Ishwar, the supreme controller, is of course God, Krishna, the cause of all causes. Although people in general, especially in the Western countries, are not aware of the fact, powerful personalities control our universe. The modern impersonal concept of the universe depicts an almost totally lifeless cosmos in which the earth floats meaninglessly. Thus, we are left with the dubious, quote, ultimate purpose, end quote, of preserving and reproducing our genetic code, which has its own, quote, ultimate purpose, end quote, of adding another link to the meaningless chain of events by again reproducing itself. In contrast to this sterile, meaningless world concocted by ignorant materialists, the actual universe is full of life, personal life, and in fact full of God who pervades and supports all that exists. The essence of reality is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his personal relationship with the innumerable living beings, of whom we are samples. Some of the living beings are trapped in the illusion of materialism or identification with the material body, while others are liberated, aware of their eternal spiritual nature. A third class comprises those progressing in self-realization from the materialistic stage of ignorance to the enlightened stage of Krishna consciousness. Reality is ultimately personal and divine, and therefore it is not surprising that, as the Vedic literature reveals to us, our universe and other universes are managed by great personalities, just as our state, city, and country are managed by empowered personalities. When we democratically award a particular politician the right to govern, we vote for him because he has exhibited something we call, quote, leadership or ability, end quote. We think, quote, he'll get the job done, end quote. In other words, it is only after an individual acquires the power to govern that we vote for him. Our vote does not make him a leader, but rather recognizes a power in him coming from some other source. Thus, as Lord Krishna explains at the end of the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, any living entity exhibiting an extraordinary power, ability, or authority must have been empowered by the Lord himself or by the Lord's energy. Those directly empowered by the Lord are devoted to him, and thus their power and influence spread goodness throughout the world, whereas those who are empowered by the Lord's illusory potency are in an indirect relationship with Krishna because they do not directly reflect his will. Of course, they do reflect his will indirectly, since it is by Krishna's arrangement that the laws of nature act upon ignorant living beings, gradually persuading them through their journey of many lifetimes to surrender to the Supreme Lord. Thus, as politicians create wars, false hopes, and innumerable passionate schemes for the materialistic persons who follow them, the politicians are indirectly carrying out the Lord's program of allowing the conditioned souls to experience the bitter fruit of godlessness. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has translated the word Ishwaranam as, quote, those who have become powerful through knowledge and austerity, end quote. As one understands the nature and will of God and makes the personal sacrifice required to achieve excellence in spiritual life, one becomes empowered by the Supreme Lord to represent his will, which one has intelligently recognized and accepted. The Supreme Personality of Godhead kindly descends to earth to show a vivid example of religious behavior, as Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita 3.24, quote, "If I did not execute standard duties, the whole world would be misled and, in fact, destroyed," end quote. Thus, the Lord showed in his different incarnations how to act properly in this world. A good example is Lord Ramchandra, who behaved wonderfully as the son of King Dasarath. But when Lord Krishna himself descends, he also demonstrates the ultimate religious principle, namely that the Supreme Lord is beyond all other living beings and that no one can imitate his supreme position. This foremost of all religious principles, that the Lord is unique, without equal or superior, was clearly demonstrated in Lord Krishna's apparently immoral pastimes with the gopis. No one can imitate these activities without incurring dire consequences, as explained here by Shukadeva Goswami. One who thinks that Lord Krishna is an ordinary living being subjected to lust, or who accepts his rasa dance as admirable and tries to imitate it, will certainly be vanquished, as described in text 30 of this chapter. Finally, a distinction must be made between the Lord and his empowered servants. An empowered servant of the Lord, as in the case of Brahma, may experience a remnant of reactions to previous activities according to the law of karma, but the Lord is eternally free from any entanglement in the laws of karma. He is on a unique platform. Text 32. My dear Prabhu, when these great persons who are free from false ego act piously in this world, they have no selfish motives to fulfill, and even when they act in apparent contradiction to the laws of piety, they are not subject to sinful reactions. Text 33. How, then, could the Lord of all created beings, animals, men, and demigods, have any connection with piety and impiety that affect his subject creatures? Purport. As explained in text 32, even great personalities empowered by the Lord are free from the laws of karma. Then, what to speak of the Lord himself? After all, the law of karma is created by him and is an expansion of his omnipotent will. Therefore, his activities, which he performs out of his own pure goodness, are never subject to criticism by ordinary living beings. Text 34. Material activities never entangle the devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are fully satisfied by serving the dust of his lotus feet. Nor do material activities entangle those intelligent sages who have freed themselves from the bondage of all fruitive reactions by the power of yoga. So how could there be any question of bondage for the Lord himself, who assumes his transcendental forms according to his own sweet will? Text 35. He who lives as the overseeing witness within the gopis and their husbands, and indeed within all living beings, assumes forms in this world to enjoy transcendental pastimes. Purport. We certainly do not assume our bodies to enjoy transcendental pastimes, as the Lord does. We, eternal souls, have accepted material bodies by force because of our foolish attempt to enjoy this material world. The Lord's forms are all eternal spiritual existence and cannot be reasonably equated with our temporary flesh. Since Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord dwelling within the gopis, their so-called husbands, and all other living beings, what possible sin could there be on his part if he embraces some of the beings he himself has created? What fault could there be if the Lord goes with the gopis to a secret place, since he already dwells within the most secret part of every living being, the core of the heart? Text 36. When the Lord assumes a human-like body to show mercy to his devotees, he engages in such pastimes as will attract those who hear about them and become dedicated to him. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami explains in this connection that when Lord Krishna descends to this world in his original two-handed form, out of kindness he manifests that form in a way his devotees conditioned in human society can perceive and understand. Thus, here it is stated, Manasam Deham Ashtita, quote, he assumes a human-like body, end quote. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur glorifies the Lord's conjugal pastimes, stating that these romantic affairs have an inconceivable spiritual potency to attract the polluted heart of conditioned souls. It is an undeniable fact that any simple or pure-hearted person who hears narrations of the loving affairs of Krishna will be attracted to the lotus feet of the Lord and gradually become his devotee. Text 37. The cowherd men, bewildered by Krishna's illusory potency, thought their wives had remained home at their sides. Thus they did not harbor any jealous feelings against him. Purport. Because the gopis loved Krishna exclusively, Yogamaya protected their relationship with the Lord at all times, even though they were married. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes from the Ujjvala Nilamani as follows. Maya kalpita tadrikshri Shilan nena nu shuyabi najatu raja devinam pratibi saha sangrama. Quote, the gopis' jealous husbands consorted not with their wives, but with doubles manufactured by Maya. Thus, these men never actually had any intimate contact with the divine ladies of Braja. End quote. The gopis are the internal energy of the Lord and can never belong to any other living being. Krishna arranged their apparent marriage to other men simply to create the excitement of Parakya Ras, the love between a married woman and her paramour. These activities are absolutely pure because they are the Lord's pastimes, and saintly persons since time immemorial have relished these supreme spiritual events. Text 38. After an entire night of Brahma had passed, Lord Krishna advised the gopis to return to their homes. Although they did not wish to do so, the Lord's beloved consorts complied with his command. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.17, Lord Krishna explains, quote, by human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. End quote. Thus, 1,000 ages entered within a single 12-hour night when Lord Krishna performed his Ras dance. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti compares this inconceivable expression of time to the fact that many universes fit neatly within the 40-mile range of earthly Vrindavan. Or one may consider that Mother Yasoda could not encircle the small abdomen of the child Krishna with numerous ropes, and that at another time he manifested many universes within his mouth. The transcendence of spirituality above and beyond mundane physics is concisely explained in Srila Rupa Goswami's Lago Bhagavatamrita. Evam prabho priyanam cha damnas cha samayasya cha avichintya prabhavatvad atra kinchid na durgatam. Quote, nothing is impossible for the Lord, his dear devotees, his transcendental abode, or the time of his pastimes, for all these entities are inconceivably powerful. End quote. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti further explains that the word Vasudevanumodita indicates that Lord Krishna advised the gopis, quote, to assure the success of these pastimes, you and I should keep them secret. End quote. The word Vasudev, a name of Krishna, also indicates Lord Krishna's plenary expansion who acts as the presiding deity of consciousness. When the word Vasudev is understood in this context, the word Vasudevanumodita indicates that the presiding deity of consciousness, Vasudev, manifested embarrassment and fear of the elders within the gopis' hearts, and therefore it was only with great reluctance that the young girls returned home. Text 39. Anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. Purport. The extraordinary power of Lord Krishna's conjugal pastimes are clearly revealed here. Qualitatively, the Lord's spiritual loving pastimes are the diametric opposite of material lusty affairs, so much so that simply by hearing about the Lord's pastimes, a devotee conquers sex desire. By reading pornographic literature or hearing about material romance, we certainly do not conquer sex desire, but rather increase our lust. But hearing or reading about the Lord's conjugal affairs has exactly the opposite effect, because they are of the opposite nature, being purely spiritual. Therefore, it is by the causeless mercy of Lord Krishna that he exhibits his Ras Leela within this world. If we become attached to this narration, we will experience the bliss of spiritual love, and thus reject the perverted reflection of that love, which is called lust. As nicely put by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 259, Param Drishtva Vartate, quote, once having directly experienced the Supreme, one will not return to material pleasures, end quote. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 33rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Rasa Dance. The following is a free-for-download audiobook available on Google Drive. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 34. Nanda Maharaj saved, and Sankarshuda slain. This chapter describes how Lord Sri Krishna saved his father Nanda from the clutches of a serpent and delivered the Vidyadhara named Sudarshan from the curse of the Angiras sages. One day, Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men placed their family members on their bullock carts and went to the Ambikavan forest to worship Lord Shiva. After bathing in the Saraswati River and worshipping Lord Sadashiva, a form of Lord Vishnu, they decided to spend the night in the forest. As they slept, a hungry serpent came and began to swallow Nanda Maharaj. Terrified, Nanda cried out in distress, quote, "O Krishna, O my son, please save me, this surrendered soul," end quote. The cowherd men immediately awoke and began beating the serpent with wooden torches, but the serpent would not release Nanda. Then Lord Krishna came and touched the serpent with his lotus foot. The serpent was immediately freed from his reptilian body and appeared in his original form as a demigod. He told them about his previous identity and described how he had been cursed by a group of sages. Then he offered his homage unto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, and on the Lord's order returned to his own abode. Later, during the Dola Purnim festival, Sri Krishna and Baladev enjoyed pastimes in the forest with the young women of Vraja. The girlfriends of Baladev and those of Krishna joined together and sang about their transcendental qualities. When the two lords became absorbed in singing to the point of apparent intoxication, a servant of Kuvara's named Sankachuda boldly came forward and began abducting the gopis. The young girls called out, quote, "Krishna, please save us," end quote, and he and Ram began to chase after Sankachuda. Quote, "Don't be afraid," end quote, Krishna called out to the gopis. In fear of the Lord, Sankachuda left the gopis aside and ran for his life. Krishna chased after him, swiftly approaching him, and with a blow of his fist, removed Sankachuda's jewel together with his head. Then Krishna brought the jewel back and presented it to Lord Baladev. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, "One day the cowherd men, eager to take a trip to worship Lord Shiva, traveled by bullock carts to the Ambika forest." Purport. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the word Ekada here indicates the occasion of Shiva Ratri. He further mentions that Ambikavan is in the Gujarat province, near the city of Siddhapur. Srila Bhaktivinoda Chakravarti Thakur adds that the departure of the cowherd men specifically took place on the 14th lunar day of the dark fortnight of the month of Falgun. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti also quotes authorities who claim that Ambikavan lies on the bank of the Saraswati River, northwest of Mathura. Ambikavan is notable because within it are deities of Sri Shiva and his wife, goddess Urma. Text 2. O king, after arriving there, they bathed in the Saraswati and then devotedly worshipped with various paraphernalia the powerful Lord Pasupati and his consort, goddess Ambika. Text 3. The cowherd men gave the brahmanas gifts of cows, gold, clothing, and cooked grains mixed with honey. Then the cowherds prayed, quote, "May the Lord be pleased with us," end quote. Text 4. Nanda, Sunanda, and the other greatly fortunate cowherds spent that night on the bank of the Saraswati, strictly observing their vows. They fasted, taking only water. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that Sunanda is the younger brother of Nanda Maharaj. Text 5. During the night, a huge and extremely hungry snake appeared in that thicket. Slithering on his belly up to the sleeping Nanda Maharaj, the snake began swallowing him. Text 6. In the clutches of the snake, Nanda Maharaj cried out, quote, "Krishna, Krishna, my dear boy, this huge serpent is swallowing me. Please save me, who am surrendered to you." End quote. Text 7. When the cowherd men heard the cries of Nanda, they immediately rose up and saw that he was being swallowed. Distraught, they beat the serpent with blazing torches. Text 8. But even though the firebrands were burning him, the serpent would not release Nanda Maharaj. Then the Supreme Lord, master of his devotees, came to the spot and touched the snake with his foot. Text 9. The snake had all his sinful reactions destroyed by the touch of the Supreme Lord's divine foot, and thus he gave up his serpent body and appeared in the form of a worshipable Vidyadhara. Purport. The words Rupam Vidyadharachitam indicate that erstwhile snake appeared in a beautiful form worshipable among the demigods called Vidyadharas. In other words, he appeared as the leader of the Vidyadharas. Text 10. The Supreme Lord Hrishikesh then questioned this personality who was standing before him with his head bowed, his brilliantly effulgent body bedecked with golden necklaces. Purport. The demigod was about to speak, and Lord Krishna wanted to focus everyone's attention on his words. Therefore, he personally inquired from the worshipable Vidyadhara, who was standing before him with his head bowed. Text 11. Lord Krishna said, "My dear sir, you appear so wonderful, glowing with such great beauty. Who are you, and who forced you to assume this terrible body of a snake?" Texts 12 and 13. The serpent replied, "I am the well-known Vidyadhara named Sudarshan. I was very opulent and beautiful, and I used to wander freely in all directions in my airplane. Once I saw some homely sages in the lineage of Angira Muni. Proud of my beauty, I ridiculed them, and because of my sin, they made me assume this lowly form." Text 14. It was actually for my benefit that those merciful sages cursed me, since now I've been touched by the foot of the supreme spiritual master of all the worlds, and have thus been relieved of all inauspiciousness. Text 15. O Lord, my Lord, you destroy all fear for those whose fearing this material world, take shelter of you. By the touch of your feet I am now freed from the curse of the sages. O destroyer of distress, please let me return to my planet. Purport. According to the Acharyas, the word apriche indicates that Sudarshan humbly requested the Lord for permission to return to his abode, where he might take up his duties again, certainly in a chastened state of mind. Text 16. O Master of mystic power, O great personality, O Lord of the devotees, I surrender to you. Please command me as you will, O Supreme God, Lord of all lords of the universe. Text 14. O infallible one, I was immediately freed from the Brahmana's punishment simply by seeing you. Anyone who chants your name purifies all who hear his chanting as well as himself. How much more beneficial, then, is the touch of your lotus feet? Text 18. Thus, receiving the permission of Lord Krishna, the demigod Sudarshan circumambulated him, bowed down to offer him homage, and then returned to his heavenly planet. Nanda Maharaj was thus delivered from peril. Text 16, or text 19. The inhabitants of Vraja were astonished to see the mighty power of Shri Krishna. Dear king, then they completed their worship of Lord Shiva and returned to Vraja, along the way respectfully describing Krishna's powerful acts. Text 20. Once, Lord Govinda and Lord Ram, the performers of wonderful feats, were playing in the forest at night with the young girls of Vraja. Purport. This verse introduces a new pastime. According to the Acharyas, the occasion mentioned here is the Holika Purnim day, also known as Gaur Purnim. Text 21. Krishna and Balaram wore flower garlands and spotless garments, and their limbs were beautifully decorated and anointed. The young women sang their glories in a charming way, bound to them by affection. Text 22. The two lords praised the nightfall, signaled by the rising of the moon and the appearance of the stars, a lotus-scented breeze, and bees intoxicated by the fragrance of jasmine flowers. Text 23. Krishna and Balaram sang, producing the entire range of musical sounds simultaneously. Their singing brought happiness to the ears and minds of all living beings. Text 24. The gopis became stunned when they heard that song. Forgetting themselves, O king, they did not notice that their fine garments were becoming loose and their hair and garlands disheveled. Text 25. While Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram thus played according to their own sweet will and sang to the point of apparent intoxication, a servant of Kuvera named Sankachuda came upon the scene. Text 26. O king, even as the two lords looked on, Sankachuda brazenly began driving the women off toward the north. The women who had accepted Krishna and Balaram as their lords began to cry out to them. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the demon Sankachuda shook a large stick at the beautiful young girls, thus frightening them and driving them toward the north. He did not actually touch them, as is corroborated by the following verse. Text 27. Hearing their devotees crying out, Krishna, Ram, and seeing that they were just like cows being stolen by a thief, Krishna and Balaram began to run after the demon. Text 28. The lords called out in reply, quote, Do not fear, end quote. Then they picked up logs of the shala tree and quickly pursued the lowest of the Guryakas, who swiftly ran away. Text 29. When Sankachuda saw the two of them coming toward him like the personified forces of time and death, he was filled with anxiety. Confused, he abandoned the women and fled for his life. Text 30. Lord Govinda chased the demon wherever he ran, eager to take his crest jewel. Meanwhile, Lord Balaram stayed with the women to protect them. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that the women were fatigued from being driven away, and thus Lord Balaram protected them and consoled them as they rested. Meanwhile, Lord Krishna went after the demon. Text 31. The mighty Lord overtook Sankachuda from a great distance, as if from nearby, my dear king, and then, with his fist, the Lord removed the wicked demon's head along with his crest jewel. Text 32. Having thus killed the demon Sankachuda and taken away his shining jewel, Lord Krishna gave it to his elder brother with great satisfaction, as the gopis watched. Purport. Various gopis perhaps thought that Govinda would give one of them the valuable jewel. To prevent rivalry among them, Shri Krishna happily gave the jewel to his elder brother, Balaram. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 34th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Nanda Maharaj Saved and Sankachuda Slain. The following is a free-for-download audiobook available on Google Drive. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 35. The gopis sing of Krishna as he wanders in the forest. This chapter contains the songs the gopis sing to express their feelings of separation from Krishna when he goes to the forest during the day. As the gopis' mood of separation from Sri Krishna becomes ever more intense, his names, forms, qualities, and pastimes begin spontaneously manifesting in their hearts. Thus they join together and sing as follows, quote, "The beauty of Krishna attracts the minds of all. When he stands in his threefold bending way and plays upon his flute, the Siddha's wives, flying in the sky with their husbands, become attracted to him and forget external reality. The bulls, cows, and other animals in the pasture become stunned in ecstasy, and they stand so still, with the grass unchewed between their teeth, that they appear like figures in a drawing. Indeed, even the unconscious rivers stop flowing." Quote, "Just see, when Krishna dresses himself in forest array and calls the cows' names by blowing on his flute, even the trees and creepers become so ecstatic out of love that their limbs display eruptions and their sap pours down like a torrent of tears. The sound of Krishna's flute causes the cranes, swans, and other birds in the lakes to close their eyes in deep meditation. The clouds in the sky gently rumble, imitating the flute's vibration, and even such great authorities in the science of music such as Indra, Shiva, and Brahma become astonished. And just as we gopis are anxious to offer everything we have to Krishna, so the wives of the black deer follow him about, imitating us. When Krishna is returning to Vraja, he constantly plays his flute while his young companions chant his glories, and Brahma and other chief demigods come to worship his lotus feet. Thus the gopis, feeling intense separation from Krishna, sing of his pastimes. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, "Whenever Krishna went to the forest, the minds of the gopis would run after him, and thus the young girls sadly spent their days singing of his pastimes." Purport. Although the gopis enjoyed direct association with Krishna at night in the rasa dance, during the day he went about his normal duties tending his cows in the forest. At that time, the minds of the gopis would run after him, but the young girls had to stay back in the village and do their own duties. Thus, feeling the pain of separation, they would sing about Sri Krishna's transcendental pastimes. Text 3. The gopis said, "When Mukunda vibrates the flute he has placed to his lips, stopping its holes with his tender fingers, he rests his left cheek on his left arm and makes his eyebrows dance. At that time, the demigoddesses traveling in the sky with their husbands, the Siddhas, become amazed. As those ladies listen, they are embarrassed to find their minds yielding to the pursuit of lusty desires, and in their distress they are unaware that the belts of their garments are loosening." Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami states that this chapter consists of a collection of statements the gopis made at various times as they stood in small groups here and there in Vrindavan. Text 4 and 5. "O girls, this son of Nanda who gives joy to the distress bears steady lightning on his chest and has a smile like a jeweled necklace. Now please hear something wonderful. When he vibrates his flute, Vraja's bulls, deer, and cows, standing in groups at a great distance, are all captivated by the sound, and they stop chewing the food in their mouths and cock their ears. Stunned, they appear as if asleep, or like figures in a painting." Purport. The word stira vidyut, quote, "steady lightning," end quote, refers to the goddess of fortune who resides on the chest of the Supreme Lord. When the animals of Vrindavan hear the sound of the flute, they become stunned in ecstasy, and thus they stop chewing their food and cannot swallow it. The gopis, in separation from Krishna, marvel at the extraordinary effect of the Lord's flute playing. Srila Dhira Swami gives the following explanation of the compound word Hadahasa, which compares Lord Krishna's smile to a necklace. Quote, the word can mean, quote, he whose smile is brilliantly clear like a jeweled necklace, end quote, or, quote, he whose smile is reflected from his jeweled necklaces, end quote. Because while Krishna plays the flute, he bends his head down and smiles. The word can also mean, quote, he whose smile, like a jeweled necklace, casts its effulgence upon his chest, or, quote, he whose necklaces shine brilliantly, just like a smile, end quote. Texts 6 and 7. My dear Gopi, sometimes Mukunda imitates the appearance of a wrestler by decorating himself with leaves, peacock feathers, and colored minerals. Then, in the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, he plays this flute to call the cows. At that time, the rivers stop flowing, their waters stunned by the ecstasy they feel as they eagerly await for the wind to bring them the dust of his lotus feet. But like us, the rivers are not very pious, and thus they merely wait with their arms trembling out of love. Purport. The gopis state here that the sound of Krishna's flute causes even inanimate objects like rivers to become conscious and then stunned in ecstasy. Just as the gopis could not always be in Krishna's physical association, the rivers could not come to the Lord's lotus feet. Although they desired the Lord, their movement was checked by ecstasy, and their, quote, arms, end quote, their waves, trembled with love of Godhead. Texts 8 through 11. Krishna moves about the forest in the company of his friends who vividly chant the glories of his magnificent deeds. He thus appears like the Supreme Personality of Godhead exhibiting his inexhaustible opulences. When the cows wander onto the mountainsides and Krishna calls out to them with the sound of his flute, the trees and creepers in the forest respond by becoming so luxuriant with fruits and flowers that they seem to be manifesting Lord Vishnu within their hearts. As their branches bend low with the weight, the filaments on their trunks and vines stand erect out of the ecstasy of love of God, and both the trees and creepers pour down a rain of sweet sap. Maddened by the divine honey-like aroma of the tulsi flowers on the garland Krishna wears, swarms of bees sing loudly for him, and that most beautiful of all persons thankfully acknowledges and acclaims their song by taking his flute to his lips and playing it. The charming flute song then steals away the minds of the cranes, swans, and other lake-dwelling birds. Indeed, they approach Krishna, close their eyes, and maintaining strict silence, worship him by fixing their consciousness upon him in deep meditation. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has made several illuminating comments on these verses. He gives the analogy that just as when household or Vaishnavas hear a Sankirtan party approaching, they become ecstatic and offer obeisances, so the trees and creepers in Vrindavan become ecstatic when they heard Krishna's flute and bowed low with their branches and vines. The word darshaniya tilaka in text 10 indicates that not only that the Lord is, quote, the most excellent to see, end quote, but also that he decorated himself with reddish, attractive tilak taken from the mineral-rich earth of Vrindavan forest. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti also points out that tulsi, although exalted in many ways, is not normally considered an especially fragrant plant. However, early in the morning, tulsi emits a transcendental fragrance that ordinary people cannot perceive, but that transcendental personalities fully appreciate. The bees, who are privileged to swarm about the flower garlands warmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, certainly appreciate this fragrance, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes from the Bhagavatam 3:15-19 to the effect that the most fragrant plants in Vaikuntha also appreciate the special qualifications of Tulsi Devi. The word Sanditavenu in text 10 indicates that Lord Krishna placed his flute firmly upon his lips, and the melody emanating from that flute is certainly the most enchanting of sounds, as the gopis describe in this chapter. Text 12 and 13. O goddess of Vraja, when Krishna is enjoying himself with Balaram on the mountain slopes, playfully wearing a flower garland on the top of his head, he engladdens all with the resonant vibrations of his flute. Thus he delights the entire world. At that time, the nearby cloud, afraid of offending a great personality, thunders very gently in accompaniment. The cloud showers flowers onto his dear friend Krishna and shades him from the sun like an umbrella. Text 14-15. O pious Mother Yashoda, your son, who is expert in all the arts of herding cows, has invented many new styles of flute playing. When he takes his flute to his bimba-red lips and sends forth the tones of the harmonic scale in variegated melodies, Brahma, Shiva, and Indra, and the other chief demigods become confused upon hearing the sound. Although they are the most learned authorities, they cannot ascertain the essence of that music, and thus they bow down their heads and hearts. Purport. The word Tava Sutta Sati, quote, your son, O chaste lady, end quote, clearly indicate that at this point Mother Yasoda is among the young gopis as they earnestly describe Lord Krishna's glories. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, among the demigods led by Shakra, Lord Indra, were Upendra, Agni, and Yamaraj. Among those led by Sarva, Lord Shiva, were Katyayani, Skanda, and Ganesh. And among those led by Parmesthi, Lord Brahma, were the four Kumars and Narada. Thus, the best collective intelligence in the universe could not definitively analyze the enchanting musical arrangements of the Supreme Lord. Text 16-17. As Krishna strolls through Vraja with his lotus petal-like feet, marking the ground with the distinctive emblems of flag, thunderbolt, lotus, and elephant goad, he relieves the distress the ground feels from the cow's hooves. As he plays his renowned flute, his body moves with the grace of an elephant. Thus, we gopis, who become agitated by Cupid when Krishna playfully glances at us, stand as still as trees, unaware that our hair and garments are slackening. Purport. Here, Mother Yasoda is no longer in the company of the gopis who are confidentially describing their conjugal attraction to Sri Krishna. It is clear from the comments of Jiva Goswami and other acharyas that the statements in this chapter were made at various times and places. This is natural, since the gopis were always absorbed in thoughts of Sri Krishna day and night. Text 18-19. Now Krishna is standing somewhere counting his cows on a string of gems. He wears a garland of tulsi flowers that bear the fragrance of his beloved, and he has thrown his arm over the shoulder of an affectionate cowherd boyfriend. As Krishna plays his flute and sings, the music attracts the black deer's wives who approach that ocean of transcendental qualities and sit down beside him. Just like us cowherd girls, they have given up all hope of happiness in family life. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami explains that in the afternoon, Sri Krishna dressed himself in new clothing and then went out to call the cows home. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives the following information about the transcendental cows of Vrindavan. Quote, for each of the 4 colors of cows, red, white, black, and yellow, there are 25 subdivisions, making a total of 100 colors. and such qualities as being colored like sandalwood pulp, tilak speckled, and having a head shaped like a mridanga drum, create 8 further groups. To count these 108 groups of cows distinguished by color and form, Krishna is using a string of 108 jewel beads. Quote, thus, when Krishna calls out, "Hey, Diwali," the name of the white cow, end quote, the whole group of white cows come forward, and when he calls Hamsi, Chadani, Ganga, Mukta, and so on, the 24 other groups of white cows come. The reddish cows are called Aruni, Kunkum, Saraswati, etc. The blackish ones, Shamala, Dumala, Yamuna, etc. And the yellowish ones, Pita, Pingala, Haritalika, etc. In the group with tilak marks on their forehead are called Chitrita, Chitta Tilak, Dirgha Tilak, and Tiryak Tilak, and there are groups known as Mridanga Mukhi, Mridanga Head, Sima Mukhi, Lion Head, and so on. Thus, being called by name, the cows are coming forward, and Krishna, thinking that when it is time to bring them home back from the forest, none should be forgotten, is counting them on his jewel beads. Text 20 and 21. O sinless Yasoda, your darling child, the son of Maharaj Nanda, has festively enhanced his attire with a jasmine garland, and he is now playing along the Yamuna in the company of the cows and cowherd boys, amusing his dear companions. The gentle breeze honors him with its soothing fragrance of sandalwood, while the various upadevs, standing on all sides like panegyrists, offer their music, singing, and gifts of tribute. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami explains that the gopis are again in the courtyard of Mother Yashoda, the queen of Vraja. They are trying to encourage her by describing Krishna's return to Vrindavan after he has spent the day herding cows and playing. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti comments that the Upadevs, the minor demigods mentioned here, include the Gandharvas, who are famous for their celestial music and dancing. Text 22 and 23. Out of great affection for the cows of Vraja, Krishna became the lifter of Govardhan Hill. At the end of the day, having rounded up all his own cows, he plays a song on his flute, while exalted demigods stand along the path, worship his lotus feet, and the cowherd boys accompanying him chant his glories. His garland is powdered by the dust raised by the cow's hooves, and his beauty, enhanced by his fatigue, creates an ecstatic festival for everyone's eyes. Eager to fulfill his friend's desire, Krishna is the moon arisen from the womb of Mother Yashoda. Purport. According to the Acharyas, at this point the gopis climbed onto the watchtowers of Vrindavan's houses so they could see Krishna as soon as possible when he returned home. Mother Yashoda was very anxious for her son to come back, and therefore she had the tallest of the beautiful young gopis climb up to see when he would arrive. It is implied here that Krishna was somewhat delayed on the way home because his lotus feet were being worshipped by great demigods along the path. Text 24 and 25. As Krishna respectfully greets his well-wishing friends, his eyes roll slightly as if from intoxication. He wears a flower garland, and the beauty of his soft cheeks is accentuated by the brilliance of his golden earrings and the whiteness of his face, which has the color of a badari berry. With his cheerful face resembling the moon, the lord of night, the lord of the Yadus moves with the grace of a regal elephant. Thus he returns in the evening, delivering the cows of Vraja from the heat of the day. Purport. The word gavam is constructed from the Sanskrit word go, which means cow or senses. Thus, Sri Krishna, by coming back to the village of Vraja, relieved the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the distress their eyes and other senses felt during the day because of being separated from direct contact with him. text 28. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, thus during the daytime the women of Vrindavan took pleasure in continuously singing about the pastimes of Krishna, and those ladies' minds and hearts, absorbed in him, were filled with great festivity. Purport. This verse definitely confirms that the so-called pain of the heartbroken gopis is actually great spiritual bliss. On the material platform, pain is pain, period. But on the spiritual platform, so-called pain is simply a different variety of spiritual ecstasy. In the Western countries, people take pleasure in mixing different flavors of ice cream to produce wonderful combinations of flavor. Similarly, on the spiritual platform, Sri Krishna and his devotees expertly mix the flavors of spiritual bliss, and thus every day was a treat for the gopis. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 35th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled, The Gopis Sing of Krishna as He Wanders in the Forest.
Shanti Bhanti Kayanti Shri Ram Jalanti Anjali Vigrasa Govindam Hari Bhushan Govindam Hari Bhushan Jai Radha Sham Shri Radha Sham Shri Jai Radha Sham Shri Radha Sham Shri Jai Radha Jai Radha Sham Shri Radha Sham Shri Jai Radha Jai Radha Lalitam Shabada Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Shri Radhe, Radhe, Jaya Bala Devi Jaya Subhada Jaya 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 Bala Devi Jaya Subhada Goranita Goranita Jai Goranita Goranita Pranana Simha, Jaya Pranana Simha, Jaya Pranana Simha, Jaya Pranana Simha, Jaya Yashodamaya Jaya Damodara, Yashodamaya Jaya Damodara, Damodara. Yashodamaya Jaya Damodara, Jalagrashna Jaya Jalagrashna Jaya Jalagrashna Jaya Jalagrashna Jaya Dhira Jaya Dhira Govardhana Dhiri Jaya Dhiri Govardhana Jaya Jaya Shubhodaya, Shubhodaya, Bhakti Dhira Swami Om Krishna Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Bhakti Dhira Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Oravani Prasari Namaste Sonya Bhagi Prasatari Satari Namaste Saraswati Devi Oravani Prasari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Dhira Damodara Swami Pura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Dhira Damodara Swami Pura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Radhe Radhe, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare.
Happy economy.
Foundation. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Wish all of you happy Dwadasi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you
Happy
very much.
Dwadashi.
Thank you. No, today is our own Ekadasi. We are observing today.
Today is Ekadashi in Nigeria.
Yes,
Oh,
not yesterday. Today we are
okay.
having. So I want to go and
Hare
complete
Krishna,
my
Gurudev.
Ekadasi job. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Hari Bol. See you later. Have a wonderful
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Thank you so much, Gurudev. So much
Thank
Pranam,
you.
Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.